Hey, what's up, guys? Gons here for the Face Like the Sun YouTube channel. A lot of people have been talking about this Virginia shooter, the two reporters that were allegedly shot, and lots of conspiracy theories abound on the internet. I'm going to try to provide a different angle. As always, I'm looking for something a little different. I'm not going to parrot all the conspiracy people, and I'm not going to parrot the media either. And I was thinking of how this whole thing is constructed, and it's very bizarre. Obviously, I don't know that this is a completely real event. The footage does look shady and whatnot, so don't get me wrong, I'm still skeptical of the official story, if you will. But I do caution everybody that's, on YouTube and looking at all these things of falling for hyper conspiratorial thinking. In essence, the elite or whoever's behind all this stuff, they must know that there's, a whole community of people that are looking at everything media does with a critical eye, if you will. And especially on YouTube, you have all sorts of avenues and platforms of people looking at it. And some people have even been censored, if you will, with some of the footage, although I'm not entirely sure if that's because of a truth claim or maybe there was people behind the YouTube control desk flagging it or taking down videos too quickly because of copyright issues or alleged copyright issues. And they'll claim that it is because of, they're spreading too much truth. And of course, that could definitely be the case. I do think that certain situations people are getting censored. It's really quick and easy for people to jump on the false flag, fake bandwagon in terms of the conspiracy world. But maybe, just maybe, this whole thing, this event here is more of a collective outworking of the controlled society, which is America. Okay. And I say that because if you think about the last 50, 60 years, we have been completely desensitized as to what death should look like. We've been propagandized how death should look. Death by a gun, death by a sword, whatever. It's all over the mainstream entertainment world. We watched movies, TV shows, all kinds of stuff. We have an idea, thanks to Hollywood, how death is supposed to look. And so when an event occurs, we are working largely, and this is not for everyone. Some people have experienced war and stuff like that, and they definitely have a perspective that's different. But for the majority of people, they're working off of the images of death that has been constructed in their minds, thanks to Hollywood, thanks to video games, stuff like that. And at the same time, other shootings and domestic terrorism events and stuff like that have also desensitized us. And obviously, all of this seems to be a perpetuated effort to create disarmament of the United States. And I fully am behind all that stuff. But the reason why I want to bring this up is because there's a couple other things to point out that are sort of weird and interesting in terms of this whole event. But, I just want to warn, because it's so easy for us to label everything as a false flag, as a psyop, and certainly that is definitely going on. But let me go through a couple interesting, things. I don't think they're coincidences, but definitely certain engineering or social engineering constructs going on here regarding this story and other stories surrounding it. Despite our alleged progress in this country and the overall sentiment of most people in America and around the world that we should, for in general, get along, love each other, etc. It's interesting because race is still a huge issue in this country. And I think that's actually a media-controlled construct. Of course, today is the anniversary of the I Had a Dream speech. And so race is definitely in the minds of people. And then you have this shooter who, part of his story allegedly coming out is that he was racially discriminated and he, went to HR a bunch of times when he was working at the news station, et cetera, et cetera. But I find that strange. And then, of course, we hear the story last night of a second shooting this week of a young man that was shot and killed at Savannah State University. And Savannah State is known as largely a African-American populated university. So we have that event, which is interesting and bizarre to, tie in together with this whole thing. But even more, okay, this is another story that came out this week that's really weird. Amelia Boynton Robinson, civil rights matriarch, dies at 104. This is 2 days ago. Again, she was one of those people that was immortalized in the civil rights movement, and everyone found out about her story in the movie Selma earlier this year. So again, there's more sort of media propping there going on. And what I found very interesting, and just looking at this CNN story here, Robinson grew up in Savannah, Georgia. This is the exact same place where this other shooting took place, where this young man, this young student was killed at the Savannah State University. Now, here's the deal, though. All these things I don't consider just coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence with all this stuff. But I do think that when we start blaming the Illuminati or the government or the Masons, etc., I am starting to get the feeling that we're giving them way too much credit, okay? Because some of this stuff, I don't think they're able to construct easily. Now, as Christians, I think for us, it's easy to recognize this whole thing as a spiritual conspiracy. And, we know that the father of lies is Satan. The ruler of this world is Satan. And so all of this seems to be an outworking of the satanic world system. And so that's what I see happening here. The whole race issue. You also have the movie Civil War coming out, the next installment of the Captain America films, which is supposed to happen after the Age of Ultron situation that, we went over earlier this year. And so, the Civil War idea, just in the minds of people, will create a connection back to the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. But again, yes, there are certain intentional aspects to this, but at the same time, I do think that it is beyond, just a group of people trying to formulate this. Yes, they are the tools that are being used by Satan to carry this stuff out, but they are also victims, I think. Then we can't forget that. Also, another interesting sort of tangent and coincidence or not coincidence, if you want to call it that. You have President Obama today giving a speech in New Orleans. It's the anniversary of the Katrina event, Hurricane Katrina, 10 years, and this week. And Obama gave a speech, I believe, yesterday on the whole situation. And we know that New Orleans is a mostly African-American populace. And so there's that tie in as well. And so I think there's a perpetuation of this sort of thinking that they're trying to create, this race war, this internal conflict in America, gun control, all sorts of stuff. And also, another thing to point out is the James Holmes case. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 3,318 years. So I wonder if they're going to keep him alive to, get him to have that sentence of 3,318 years. But it's interesting that this sentencing came down the same day as the two reporters were shot. So again, a lot going on here. And I think there's certainly a quote-unquote conspiracy, but let's look beyond some of the groups, and I think there's a spiritual movement happening here behind the scenes for all of this. But let me conclude with a story that came out of the UK, and I think it ties in this whole thing together kind of nicely as to where things are headed, because it's not just one thing. All these different threads are weaving one huge blanket, right? Just want to say thanks to Brother Andy of the band Dissident Prophet for relaying me a couple of things, and this is just one of them. But Birmingham, UK, if you're in that area, there's a place called the John Lewis Shopping Mall. Well, they're rebuilding the entire thing. And as you see here, they're creating this giant eye-shaped screen on one side. And actually, they're building a second one on the other side, a bigger one of this huge eye-shaped screen that looks over the people as they walk in. Now, it's interesting that in this little news story about this giant eye, it starts off with a peacock imagery. Of course, a peacock is in the occult the symbol for immortality, the symbol for renewal. That's a thing. But also, it's interesting because one of the things that is unique to this giant eye-shaped screen is that it also has face recognition software. And according to the story here, it can read someone's age, their gender, and they are going to use it for marketing purposes and to display certain ads that correspond with the populace that is, in front of it or whatever. Of course, they're suggesting that it's just a marketing tool, but we know that this kind of technology is moving into something a little bit more nefarious as we continue to develop our brave new world and the complete surveillance system in this fallen world. So, this is just more of Satan trying to be like God, trying to be omniscient. So all in all, the main point of this video, it wasn't to, call conspiracy or call false flag on the event, although I'm leaning obviously in that direction. I watched the footage. It is a bit suspicious. It does kind of seem like there are blanks there. It's lacking some thrust and things like that with the woman who was shot and stuff. So it's a little bit shady. However, I do think that calling it out per se and calling it conspiracy and whatnot is not necessarily going to help anybody other than to maybe help them wake up to what's really going on. But ultimately, what we need to help people realize is that freedom from all of this worldly system is only found in one man, and that's Jesus Christ. And actually, I do want to close with this. So in Matthew 5, there's a, this is a really, really famous passage, but just think about this for a second. In Matthew 5:39, it's the whole passage about loving your enemies. Here's what it says. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil, but if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And, this is kind of this radical idea. And, it's a very famous passage. But here's a crazy, crazy concept, thought experiment, whatever you want to call it. Imagine every single person in the world abiding by this principle of turning the other cheek. Eventually, this sort of evil or, the evil outlet will cease to exist. It's just a thought experiment. And, I don't think it's going to go down until Jesus returns. But think about that. I mean, it's such a simple idea of turning your other cheek. But in practicality, if everyone applied this principle, and it's not easy to do, obviously, we're seeking justice, we're seeking retaliation, that kind of stuff is just in our nature. But ultimately, in the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, what we're expecting is this sort of nonviolent, above this sort of evil. And, so I think that's what we should be seeking, not to pick a fight or to try to, kill the Illuminati people or whatever. And the people that are part of that, they also have an opportunity to repent unless, they've enhanced themselves and they're transhuman or whatever. But in any case, those are just some of my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Hope you guys have an awesome day. God bless.